What's going down, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Commander Ad Populum. Commander for the people, by the people, for the people. This is episode number 27. I am your host, Ryan. Welcome if this is your first time. Welcome back if that applies to you. It's been forever for me. I had, I think, 5 episodes in the bank. So for me, this has been forever. I'm recording this near the end of October, and I've had episodes in the bank ever since the end of September. So this is almost feeling brand new for me. Before we get into anything else, though, huge thank you to official sponsors of Commander Ad Populum. They are FusionGamingOnline.com. You can go there for all of your gaming needs. And of course, you can find Commander Ad Populum as well as Fusion's other sponsored content on themanabase.com. Since my last recording session, we've had a couple new patrons as well. Huge thank you and shout out to Jim Dean and Andrew Fagelli. Relatively easy names for me this week, so I very much appreciate that. And since we've recently had Canadian Thanksgiving and American Thanksgiving is coming up, I wanted to take a couple minutes just to sort of reflect over the last month what I've been thankful for and what I appreciate both internally and in my own life, but also out in the Commander Ad Populum universe. Of course, I'm thankful for, and I always do my best to tell my wife that I appreciate that she supports me. Her name is Rebecca. I just had, that I also appreciate, I just had some Halloween candy that's coming up. I don't think that she knows that I know where the Halloween candy is hiding. So I had some of that. It's great. Halloween is coming up. We got a 2-year-old. It's always lots of fun because kids get so excited. You know, he's obsessed with The Nightmare Before Christmas. And Rebecca thought he was going to be scared. I knew he wouldn't be. So he knows all the songs now and starting to sing them and stuff. So that's lots of fun. Plus, that's my favorite musical. So I watch it every time he wants to watch it. Huge thank you to all of the supporters out there that are either following on Facebook or Twitter and picking up any of my altered art cards. That is my real job, and I very much appreciate everybody who has taken time to either share, retweet, bid on any of the CCO Thursday auctions, or otherwise pick cards up from me through commissions or through sales on Twitter. So I hugely appreciate that. You guys are letting me live my dream job, and the ability to continue producing 2 podcasts now and the Commander Cookout YouTube channel is the result of that. So huge thank you there. Huge thank you to all of the active Discord members on the Commander Ad Populum Discord server. It's lots of fun on there, and we are, I know I've said it a few times now, like a little bit of a family. You know, we talk about hobbies and wellness and jobs and our families. So all things I'm super thankful for. So everybody, if you're listening, thank you. If you wanted to be a part of any of that, you could, of course, head to patreon.com/cadpopcast. That is where you can pledge to the show. There's a bunch of good benefits, the Discord channel, discounts on altered art cards, that kind of thing. At CAD Popcast on Twitter, of course, and Commander Ad Populum or CAD Popcast on Facebook. You could search either of those things and I'll come up. There's always just a little bit of kind of dialogue and discussion after the shows about the topics or how they made people feel. So if you're into any of that, head on over to those social media platforms. You can find me there. No interview today. We're sort of back to our regularly structured program. We've got a community topic, a sort of technical section that I'm going to roll together with the community topic, and then, of course, a set retrospective, another set that I reminisce about and is very nostalgic to me. So we'll get into today's community topic just after this. Okay, I am back, and I've got a little bit more of an ethereal topic this week. But before I get into it, I want to just take a quick sec and say that I'm going to start doing a little bit of a community spotlight social media post. This is an idea that I got from my friends Ryan and Zach over at Commander Social. They have a podcast and YouTube channel, of course, and every time they mention somebody or a product or another show or something, they do a Twitter post where they tag them. That helps them kind of say, hey, we're talking about you. This is a social thing. It's going to help me say, hey, here's some members of the community that you can listen to in addition to Commander ad Populum. So I hope people like it. I hope I raise a little bit of awareness for the other people out in the community. And today's community spotlight is going to be focused on a conversation that I heard a friend of mine that I met at Magic Fest Las Vegas this year named Henry Stukenborg talk about on an episode of EDH Recast a little while ago. I want to say it was like around the start of the year or maybe December of last year, where he talked about going out into the wild and essentially wasting other people's time. So what that means is showing up and dirtling around or creating an unfun experience at a local game store for his opponents when he's playing games of Commander against them. And I'm going to roll this into a little bit of a package, and then I'm going to talk about some ways to avoid this in the technical section today. So let's break it down a little bit. What does it mean? You show up, you go to your local game store. I want to say almost every Friday, and I go and play with the CCO Dude Bros on Tuesday nights. Of course, the CCO Dude Bros and myself are all very tight-knit. We're all very good friends, not really scared to say anything or have the power level discussion with each other or call each other out if something is unfun or not afraid to ask if, can you switch decks? That was too powerful. That wasn't the game that we wanted to play, or I'm just tuning this deck. I just built it, what have you, right? But at a local game store, that isn't always the case, and it isn't always an option. Of course, Commander Rule 0 says that when you sit down, you have to have the discussion with people. What power level are we playing? And that isn't, of course, the best question. And there's some content out there that talks about, different ways to ask how powerful is your deck? How fast is your deck? How does your deck win? All those things. But if you sit down with somebody and they say, yeah, my deck, it's a fairly new deck. It's maybe a 5 out of 10 in power level, or it wins with attacking with big creatures. You know that it's not necessarily a combo deck. If it wins with attacking with creatures, it's probably got a bunch of creatures in it that doesn't leave a whole bunch of room for a ton of disruption. And maybe if you are packing disruption in your own deck, you can deal with things like Coat of Arms or Akroma's Memorial or Eldrazi Monument with the little bit of disruption that you're packing, and you can kind of get a little bit of an edge when they say, yeah, I win through attacking with creatures. At the same time, this conversation isn't for you to say, oh, you're playing a creature deck? Hold on, let me get my XYZ combo deck that's faster, right? That's not what this conversation is about. And if you did that, then you would just be doing the opposite of what you're trying to achieve. You would be the person that wastes that player's time. What I'm trying to achieve with saying all this is that when you go out, whether it be with your friends, at a bar if you play there, a local game store, your friend's house, whatever it is, you all want to sit down and have a good time. And it's all of our responsibilities to say, what are you playing? What type of game do you want to have, or what kind of experience do you want to have? And I think that'll go a long way in not wasting anybody's time. We've all heard the horror stories of the 10-minute turns, the 15-minute turns, the 30-minute turns, whatever it is, and one player gets to play. And at that point, is he even really playing, or is he just like going through the motions? You know what I mean? Sort of. The opposite type of thing is also true if you sit down and somebody asks you, what are you playing? You say something like, oh, it's like this janky Arjun the Shifting Flame combo deck, or this Niv Mizzet deck, or in my case, one of my janky decks is the Lord of Tressorhorn deck, right? And in the first two examples, it wins by drawing cards, or in my Lord of Tressorhorn case, it wins by mass reanimating all of the creatures in its graveyard. Neither of those things, or neither of those examples, are a dedicated win condition. So this is where I'm going to flip it over to the technical section. Let's talk about this for a second. You sit down, you're playing what you call a creature deck. Let's say it wins with Craterhoof Behemoth. Or pick your other thing, Pathbreaker Ibex, Overwhelming Stampede, Fury of the Horde, any single cast thing that just buffs your whole team. It doesn't have to be green, maybe it's Cathar's Crusade, maybe it's Marshall's Anthem to reanimate a creature and buff all your team, like whatever it is. Say it's a single cast thing in your creature deck that you rely on to win the game. Let's say that gets countered and you have no graveyard recursion. Let's say that that's exiled before you can ever play it. how are you going to win? And if you have no way to win after said thing happens, does that turn into, for lack of a better term, you wasting your opponent's time? In some cases, yes. In some cases, no. We'll cover the no first. If your deck has other ways to win or redundancies to the effect that you are trying to achieve, then no, you're not wasting anybody's time. If you have, like I had just mentioned, Crater Hoof and Pathbreaker Ibex and Fury of the Horde and Overwhelming Stampede all in your green creature deck, one gets countered or exiled, just dig until you find the next one, or continue playing the game until you find the next one. If, for example, you are running a Niv Mizzet deck or an Arjun the Shifting Flame deck, whatever it is, and your win con is just digging through your deck to find cards, that isn't really a win con. And you could argue that in a Niv Mizzet deck, Niv Mizzet Perun, the one where he deals a damage every time you draw a card, that's the new one, that could be your win con, but you have to take a whole bunch of time to draw a whole bunch of cards to deal a whole bunch of damage. Like 40 times 3, just for lack of a better number, is 120 damage. That means you got to draw 120 cards, so you got to shift your graveyard back into your library at some point. And I think for the amount of cards that it takes to achieve that in game, I mean, congratulations if you can do that, like achievement unlock type scenario. But for the amount of cards it takes to do that in a game, if you don't have any other dedicated win condition, you're really doing yourself and the people that you play with at your local game store a disservice. If your plan is to dig, and digging is going to kill creatures or whittle down a player's life total until you can, let's say, Earthquake or Comet Storm or direct damage them in some other meaningful way from, let's say, 10 life or even 20 life instead of 40 down to 0, that's a dedicated win condition. And I think it would behoove every Commander player, but especially new ones, to dig into their decks or spread their decks out on their bedroom floor, wherever you build decks, on a table, on the computer if you use websites to help you do it. Separate them into a little bit of a different category. Lots of times people, when you lay your decks out, they'll lay out all the lands, all the creatures, enchantments, artifacts, and then spells. What I would encourage people to do instead as a deck building exercise or a deck tuning exercise is, sure, lands, creatures, whatever, but make a sort of a custom category for win conditions. When you draw this, let's say late game, this is what's going to win you the game. How many of those do you have in your deck? And if the answer is none, or there's no single thing that is going to move me the last chunk of the way to a win or a dead opponent, I would suggest looking at that, because games are going to drag out, and a lot of the times when games drag out like that, especially if it's the last game of the night, you're getting kicked out of the store, they can tend to feel not fun. They can tend to feel like a little bit of a drag. So I guess the TLDR of this whole 2 segments of the first half of the show is go into a game with a specific plan of attack to win. If you're not sure what that is, lay your deck out in such a way that you can clearly identify what pieces of your deck are going to make you win or allow you to eliminate players from the game. If you can identify that, you're going to start knocking people out. You're going to start winning more games. Not all at once, but gradually. If you can knock 1 extra player out of a game once per night and you play 3 games per night, over a month, maybe that's going to lead to 1 extra game win. Maybe it'll lead to 2 extra game wins. All you have to do is start actively moving towards how you're going to win the game instead of just dirtling or playing the game. And I know that sounds weird. Oh, you play the game and eventually you'll win. No, the person who is actively trying to win the game through deck building stratagem, those are the people that are going to win. And I say especially new players should do this, because a lot of the times when people are new to Magic or new to Commander, all they want to do is get a big section of cards or a bunch of things that are in their collection that they want to play and just play them. And they don't necessarily think about how they're going to move towards victory. And what that does in game is just keeps you alive. And yes, Commander is the format that you can kind of play whatever you want. And I encourage people to do that, but you can play everything you want with reservation to fit in things that are going to move you towards a win. So give it a go. I think you'll be a lot happier when you do. It feels good to eliminate players out of the game most of the time, and it certainly feels good to win most of the time, as long as you're doing it in an honest way, as per Rule 0 at the start of the game, and with a specific direction as per your deck building process or deck tuning process. Oh baby, we are chugging right along with our set retrospectives. We are already, like it's the 26th episode, Ryan, we are at the 16th Magic expansion, Urza's Legacy. So this is the second set in the Urza block, or the artifact block, whatever you prefer to call it. February 15th, 1999, and 143 cards. So this is back to the standard template of 350 big set, 143 little set. You'll see that from couple sets ago, or like from Tempest block all the way forward to, I don't even know when they stopped doing that, maybe Kamigawa. Anyways, Urza block was like that, Masks block, Invasion block, Onslaught block, Odyssey block, they're all like that. So a couple new things. We are continuing with Echo in this set. We have cyclers, and then we've got a couple cycles, not to be confused with the ability cycling. We know by this point in the set retrospectives that Wizards likes cycles of things, one thing in each color that represent, the same thing, but they are themed at a specific color. And you know what? It's been so long, I don't actually remember if we talked about Echo in the Urza's Saga set retro. What that is it comes on a creature, or in Urza's Legacy's case, when it comes on an artifact, you cast the card for whatever it costs, and then the next upkeep, you have to pay the Echo cost, which is the same as its converted mana cost. So the most famous two Echo creatures are in this set. And this time we are getting creatures with Echo that have abilities stapled to them, like an ETB effect. And like all of Urza block, this is kind of the first time they did this in mass, and they kind of didn't really know how powerful it was going to be. So we got things like the Echo creatures in this set that we'll talk about in a second. So Echo, cycling, some cycles, some man lands or person lands, whatever you prefer to call them. But before we talk about any of that, we do cover the legendary creatures. There's two of them in this set. Multani Marrow Sorcerer is a star for green 4, power and toughness each equal to the total number of cards in all players' hands. And he has Shroud. So Shroud, kind of an antiquated ability. That means that nobody can target it with anything. Great ability, but you can't equip your own creature if it has Shroud, because you can't target it. I remember when I was learning how to play Magic, the people that were teaching me had a whole bunch of Urza block cards, and this is one of them that I would lose to a ton of times, because they would play something like Levitation, also in Urza's Legacy, that gives all creatures they control flying, and they're not targeting their Multani, but now I can't block it, and it would just be huge. And this is back in the day, and I would play in 10-player games, so Multani would have 5 power from that person, 6 from that person, 4 from that person, 6 from that person. He would be so huge, 20 life, of course, and routinely they'd have Levitation out. Next turn they would drop their Multani, and then they're off to the races with the 20/20, like a one-hit kill type thing. So I guess the same is sort of true in Commander now, because it's a 4-player format. You might drop a Multani and be off to the races with your Voltron Shroud commander. So that's kind of cool. I guess it's kind of aged well in that regard. And then the other legendary creature is Radiant Archangel. So this is a 3/3 flying angel with vigilance for white 3. Radiant gets +1/+1 for each other creature with flying on the battlefield. So bird tribal, angel tribal, white thing with flying tribal. I've lost to this deck. My buddy JJ has one, and it's a little bit janky, but late game it's just like flyer, 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 and all of a sudden you've got like, a 7/7 or 8/8 commander coming at you. Of course, it has flying, so fun card, cool art. Of course, these older sets have very wide and ranging art styles and art directions. So I encourage everybody to go on to Scryfall or Gatherer or wherever you go and look up all the cards, because they just feel older. They look older, right? So a couple of the cycles that I was talking about I'm not going to go into all of them, but I do want to touch on the ones that are good for Commander. We do have a cycle of man lands. They are Forbidding Watchtower, Fairy Conclave, Spawning Pool, Get to Encampment, and Treetop Village. So they come into play tapped. They give you some color of whatever color they are, and you can pay an amount of mana and turn them into something. I think at one time in competitive Magic, like in the late 90s, and maybe even around 10th edition, like around 2006 or 7, when they were all reprinted, they did have some standard play. They did see some major tournament play. For Commander, I mean, like Forbidding Watchtower turns into a 1/5, I think a soldier. So I don't know, soldier tribal maybe. Fairy Conclave turns into a fairy flyer, so that's relevant. Get to Encampment turns into a 2/1 first striker or something. The Treetop Village, though, enters the battlefield tapped. You can tap it for a green, or you can tap green 1. It becomes a 3/3 with trample. So I've played this card in a couple different EDH decks to great effect, just because it's kind of on curve, you know what I mean? Like if you pay 2 and then you have to tap it to attack with it, it's like a 3/3 for 3 when you have extra mana kicking around. With the downward trend in converted mana cost and more efficient creatures, it's not terrible. The other cycle I wanted to talk about were a series of enchantments. They're rare enchantments. The white one, Planar Collapse, is white 1. During your upkeep, if there are 4 or more creatures on the battlefield, sacrifice Planar Collapse and destroy all creatures. They can't be regenerated. So that was the common thing. They were called the sleepers. They would do nothing when you cast them, so they're do nothing enchantments, which, you know, as Commander players, we love that. But when it came back around to your turn, if there was a certain condition met, you did something. And this one, if there are 4 or more creatures, you just kill them all for 2 mana and a turn cycle. The other one that was very prolific, even to this day still, is Defense of the Heart. Green 3, and this is an expensive card. This card's like $35. Green 3, during your upkeep, if one of your opponents controls 3 or more creatures, sacrifice Defense of the Heart, search for 2 creatures, put them onto the battlefield. The battlefield. So I've seen, Ulamog and Kozilek. I've seen Razaketh and Blightsteel Colossus. Shieldred and Jin-Gitaxias. Like, I've seen all kinds of crazy. You get 2 creatures right onto the battlefield. So this is a cool card. Lightning Rod A1 target as soon as it hits the battlefield, because 4 mana and 1 turn cycle is going to get you the 2 biggest, baddest dudes in your whole deck. So I like that. Moving on to the set proper, lots of stuff in here that has like protection from colors, lots of enchantments. If Urza's Saga was the artifact set, this would be the enchantment set for the entire Urza block. But first thing I want to talk about is one of those creatures that has Echo. That card you might know as Karmic Guide. It's a 2/2 flying, protection from black, Echo for white 3. When it enters the battlefield, choose target creature card from your graveyard, put it onto the battlefield. So we're going to call it a reanimation spell on a 5-drop body, pro black, so it can block black flying demons all day for 5 mana. So super good card. I see the Echo cost of white 3 get paid all the time when there are big black flying demons on the battlefield, or you just let it die and you've got the best thing out of your graveyard back. Or you chump block a non-black thing with it because you didn't plan on playing the Echo cost anyways. Legacy All-Star, Mother of Ruins, 1/1 for white. You tap it, target creature gains protection from the color of your choice until end of turn. So 2 things in a row that give you protection. Scrolling down through the list, this is the next kind of super cycle we're going to talk about. Not really a cycle because it doesn't have 1 of each color, but through the converted mana cost chain, there is 1 at 2, 1 at 3, 1 at 5, 1 at 4, 1 at 5, and I think 1 at 7 and 1 at 8. They are the free spells from Urza block. We touched on, I think, Peregrine Drake last week. Today we're going to touch on Cloud of Fairies, Frantic Search, and Palinchron. So at their respective converted mana costs, I'm just going to use Cloud of Fairies as an example. A 1/1 for blue 1. So 2 mana total, flying. When it enters the battlefield, untap up to 2 lands. So essentially it's free. Palinchron is the same thing. It costs 7, you untap 7 lands. Frantic Search costs 3, you untap 3. So in addition to being free, they give you some effect, like a 1/1 flyer, or in Palinchron's case, a 4/5 flyer that you can pay for to return it to your hand. All you have to do is be able to bounce these and generate net positive mana. So Palinchron, hugely expensive card because it's the backbone of a ton of different combos. If you've got land that produce 2 or a land that produces more than 1 mana in general that you can untap, you're netting mana off of that untap. So hugely powerful, hugely broken. These broke the game, and they're still breaking Commander these days, like Palinchron and Deadeye Navigator. Tell me that that's fair. Or any of these cards in like an Animar deck where you can just pay 1 mana and untap 5 mana with Peregrine Drake, for example. So they're fun, but just be aware that when you play these, people are going to give you the side eye because they know that you're doing broken stuff with them. Moving along, we've got a card called Engineered Plague. This is what the card Plague Engineer in Modern Horizons was based off of. This was an enchantment, of course, for black 2. When it enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type, and all creatures of the chosen type get -1/-1. So kind of like how Plague Engineer works. So if you have somebody, or if you're in a meta that a certain type of token deck is rampant, this could be a way to shut it down. Of course, No Mercy, another enchantment, black 2. Whenever a creature deals damage to you, destroy it. And that's any kind of damage. Doesn't need to be combat damage. So just be aware, if again, from my earlier section, if you're playing against a Niv Mizzet deck, maybe a No Mercy is a good card to pack against that. Here comes my favorite card in this set, Phyrexian Plague Lord. I love the art. I love the abilities. I love that it's a 4/4 beater for 5. Which isn't that great in Modern Magic, but I mean, 4/4 for 5 is still going to get the job done a lot of the times. What it does is you can tap and sacrifice Phyrexian Plague Lord to give target creature -4/-4 until end of turn. But the real reason you play this card is you can sacrifice any creature to give target creature -1/-1. So in your token deck, you can just kill the whole board by sacrificing stuff at instant speed. I play this in a Lenda because you can sacrifice a Lenda, and if she's got like 20 counters on her, she's going to give you 20 more 1/1 vampires. You could do that at end of turn, and on your turn, sacrifice a couple vampires to eliminate blockers and then just bash in for whatever the remainder is, 16, 17, 15, whatever. Excellent card. Those Phyrexians, they're finding good ways to do stuff all the time. Like Phyrexian Reclamation. Another enchantment for black. You can pay black 1 and 2 life, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So not really reanimation, it's repeatable Raise Dead for, the premium of pay 2 life and black 1, but you can do stuff over and over again if you have a lot of mana, or if you have maybe a creature that has a sacrifice ability. So cool card, sees lots playing EDH. I'm trying to fly through this so we don't have another 50-minute episode. I know some people appreciate that, but I'm trying to get through it quickly so I can cover everything. Next card I want to talk about is the other really sweet Echo card from this set, Avalanche Riders. A 2/2 for red 3. It's got haste. Doesn't really matter, but it has haste. When it enters the battlefield, destroy target land. Ooh, yeah. So if this dies because you don't pay the Echo cost, it has haste, so you can get your 2 damage in. But more often than not, you see this paired in like a Rakdos decks where you can just reanimate this thing from your graveyard, maybe repeatably, to get all the lands, like a one-sided Armageddon type thing. That's the kind of thing, like my previous section, where you are upfront with the type of win condition that you use, and then of course having a plan or a dedicated win condition to finish out the game, because nobody likes to sit there and just top deck, not a land, say go, then you attack them for 2 with your Avalanche Riders. Like, that isn't a fun way to play the game, and the player sitting across from you is going to feel like they've wasted their time sitting down to play a game with you. So Avalanche Riders or Armageddon type effects where you're destroying lands have a win condition. I can't stress that enough. Next card, Goblin Welder. It's a 1/1 goblin for red. You can tap and exchange control of an artifact for an artifact in that player's graveyard. So you swap them. Hugely powerful card. You can do all kinds of little tricky things with this, with big creatures in your graveyard or big artifacts in your graveyard. So this is a commander card. I think it's a little bit of a legacy card alongside Goblin Engineer that kind of does the same thing. And it was originally in Urza's Legacy. I think it got a reprint somewhere along the lines, or it had a Judge reprint or something. So huge popular commander card. If you play goblins or if you play Deretti or some artifact-based red deck, you're probably going to want a Goblin Welder just because it's really below rate on getting artifacts back repeatedly. Speaking of below rate, this card's a little bit fallen out of favor, but I remember when a card called Rack and Ruin was really powerful. It's an instant for red 2, destroy 2 target artifacts. So everybody remembers Shatter. It was red 1, destroy target artifact. You can tack on 1 more colorless to destroy 1 more artifact. It's like 2 shatters for the cost of 1.5 shatters. So this was a very popular card. Of course, things like Vandal Blast have since kind of replaced it because you can pay 5 and get everything. But sometimes, a Rack and Ruin is pretty good. Just throwing that out there. Destroying artifacts. Vishino Heretic, also very good at doing that. Destroy target artifact, and it deals damage equal to the CMC to that artifact's controller. So if you like to play big artifacts, watch out for Vishino Heretic if you're playing against like some old guy like me. Crop Rotation, huge legacy card. I mean, you sack a land to find any land in your entire library. That is a mighty card. Same converted mana cost of Crop Rotation at just green is Rancor. And Rancor is an enchant creature, gives enchanted creature +2/+0 and trample. And if the creature is put into the graveyard, you can return Rancor to your hand. So you always get it. It kind of negates the card disadvantage that playing an aura gives you because you get it back. Onto the artifacts, we've got things like Crawl Space, which hinders creatures that are attacking. It makes it so only 2 creatures can attack you each combat. You've got Defense Grid. Spells played during another player's turn cost 3 more. You've got CEDH Commander All-Star, $150 All-Star. Grim Monolith costs 2, taps for 3. Need I say more? And finally, I want to round out the set retrospective with a little ditty called Memory Jar. Last week, we talked about emergency bannings in Standard with Tolarian Academy alongside things like Mox Diamond, Lotus Petal, and Mind Over Matter. This week, I want to tell you about Memory Jar because this was the card that made all of that possible. So there was like some invitational tournament that players could use Urza block cards, particularly Urza's Legacy cards before they were released. I think I've got that right. It's pro players. It was kind of like an invitational thing. And wouldn't you know, some great professional mind in Magic the Gathering saw Memory Jar and broke it wide open because what it does is for 5 mana, you cast it, and then you can tap and sacrifice it. Each player sets aside their hand, like they exile their hand face down, and draws 7 new cards. That's their new hand. At the end of the turn, they discard those, whatever's remaining in that new hand, and they get their old hand back. So if you could drop all of the artifacts in your hand, Lotus Petal, Mox Diamond, Grim Monolith, and play a Tolarian Academy so you could generate, 10 or 12 mana, 13 mana on turn 1, then you cast a Memory Jar to draw 7 more cards, and then you can cast all your artifacts again because they all cost 0 or 2, and then you can cast another Memory Jar because you're drawing 7 cards every time you cast a Memory Jar. You can rip through your entire deck, all 4 Memory Jars, and generate a ton of mana. When you pair your mana rocks with something like Voltaic Key, which untaps artifacts, that was in Urza's Saga, and discarding cards to untap your Tolarian Academy with your Mind Over Matter. You could generate a ton of mana. I talked about this on the Urza's Saga set retro, and you could Stroke of Genius your opponent for like 700 million on turn 1. So they emergency banned Memory Jar before it even came out. And like Yawgmoth's Will from Urza's Saga, Memory Jar is one of my favorite cards because it's kind of got that stigma around it, and it is so broken, and they just didn't really know what it was going to do. And I have to say that I do keep a little bit of a tally. Every single time I've ever cast Memory Jar and activated it, I've won the game. Turns out draw 7, really, really good. And then when you discard the remainder of your new hand to get your old hand back, you can plan for what's going to your graveyard and what you're getting in your old hand back. You can plan all that out. So if you've got graveyard shenanigans after that, like a Past in Flames or a Yawgmoth's Will, you just keep those cards essentially that go to your graveyard. You can just get them back with Yawgmoth's Will. So Memory Jar, it's probably my second or third favorite card ever. So that was Urza's Legacy. I hope everybody enjoyed reminiscing about it as much as I did. Like I say, when I was learning to play in Masks and Invasion block, the people that were teaching me with that broken degenerate stuff in Urza's block, because those are the cards that they had. So if you've got any good stories from Urza block, learning to play Magic or what have you, you can hit me up on the Facebook or Twitter threads for episode 27. They'll both be there the day that the episode launches. Of course, cadpopcast@gmail.com for anything longer formed or more private. All of those channels are great for submitting show topics as well. If you want to have your community-based topic covered, like I covered Henry Stukenborg's today, you can hit me up all those places. Of course, big thank you to FusionGamingOnline.com, the official sponsors. You can go there for all of your Urza's Legacy needs. And of course, big thank you to all of the patron supporters, patreon.com/cadpopcast. Check it out. Great benefits, great community to be a part of. I'm super happy that we've kind of all meshed and clicked and helped each other in ways that we don't even know that we're helping each other. You know what? Everybody who's part of that Discord, and I check it, a couple times a day just to see what's up. Even if I'm lurking and don't say anything, I hear you, I see you, and I do appreciate you. So thank you, everybody. I will see you next Wednesday.